Hi, this is Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of Antioch Assembly Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement. And I'd ask you to subscribe, and share our YouTube videos. We also have a Patreon if you are so led to go that route and to help support the 2019 movement. So got some great news. I was in January of 2018, a bill was passed through Congress called the 400-Year African History Commission Act. President Trump signed it into law. I believe it was January the 8th of 2018. And I have been nominated and appointed through a congressional appointment to be on the commission. And so we're going to be doing events in the 2019 year. And the commission is going to be working up until July of 2020. And so that's a good thing. And if you've been following, we started the 2019 movement back in 2016. And most of the stuff that I'm talking about, or I teach on, or preach on, or write about, I've been doing so since for over 10 years now. Since 2004, I started to wake up about the Democratic Party and some of the things that we're doing that really were harmful to the black community. 2005, 2008, I began to speak out against the liberal agenda that is really detrimental to the black community. And then in 2012, I officially got off the Democratic ticket. I no longer was a registered Democrat, and now I'm an independent. Now, the Republicans have a lot of good things, a lot of good foundational principles that they stand for that really line up with the desires and the goals of our community. But I didn't feel led to become a Republican simply because in this the way that society has been socially engineered and brainwashed. If you say that you're a Democrat or Republican, that automatically puts you in a category, especially if you're black and you say that you're a Republican, then they automatically shut you down and they don't even open up their minds to hear what you're saying. So my decision to switch parties and all the things that I speak out on are things that are well documented. They're well researched. I've researched them in great detail. I provide on my YouTube channel and in my books tons of proof to back up what I say, about the things that I talk about, that I'm passionate about. And so at the end of the day, you have to make your own decision, but it's our job, my job and others, to really push the envelope, to push the information out there, to encourage, to compel, to provoke you to think at a deeper level so that you won't get taken the advantage of. But one of the things I want to talk about today is, and just for the record, I need to make a statement here. And again, this is well researched and documented. This doesn't apply to every person involved in these things, but this is the overall theme. So liberalism, and socialism, communism, all these things are demonic. They're Luciferian. If you go back to the foundation of these particular institutions, whether it's the liberal movement, and I'm talking about liberalism in America, because people have told me that in Europe many years ago, liberalism meant a different thing. So I'm talking about liberalism as it is here in America in this current time that we live in. It's based on Luciferianism, occultism, socialism and communism are Luciferian concepts. Those who started it, whether it's Karl Marx or Friedrich Nietzsche, these are people that were Luciferian, and they were pushing for a new world order, one world governmental system. They knew, and they have said it openly, that Lucifer is the head of the one world governmental system. So with that being said, let me drill it down a little bit more and show you how not only is it demonic, but how it's being used to manipulate and to twist us, especially in regards to race relations, relations between biological sex, and those type of things. So you have, you have this. Nimrod perfected communism in Genesis chapter 11. Socialism is the economic arm and socialism is just a forerunner, a precursor that attempts to move society as a whole to this communistic system. And communism's ultimate goal is a one world governmental system. And the people that created communism and who continue to promote communism and communistic ideologies are Luciferian. you know, and the average person, like the average college student or liberal or, you know, the average outspoken liberal, they may not understand that. But the people that are behind the scenes orchestrating it, they know it's based in Luciferianism and the ancient mystery religions, Kabbalah, occult, and all those type of things. So Nimrod perfected it, but he also perfected it in a way to package it in a way that made the people, the masses, believe that it was in their best interest to surrender control to this leader, also known as the Antichrist, the spirit of the Antichrist. And so it created a system and a dynamic that it's you know, you hear me talk about the Hegelian dialectic, thesis, synthesis. You have thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So they control both sides of the narrative, and it pushes you into a direction, right? Also known as the Hegelian dialectic. What they do is, for instance, they create the problem many times, and they offer you the solution. So, for instance, you have a lot of violence and a lot of gun violence, and their solution is for you to give up your guns. So ultimately, they want to give up your guns. They want to get rid of the Second Amendment, and this is their idea. They want to get rid of the Second Amendment so that you would turn over control to the government to protect you. And of course, if you don't have the opportunity or the ability to protect yourself, then there's nothing stopping a tyrannical governmental system from coming in and just taking over, which is the whole purpose behind the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, although it also provides provision for you to protect your home, your personal property from an invader, an intruder, or someone who wants to hurt you. But the true purpose behind the Second Amendment is to protect the people from governmental tyranny. And you think about, they came from England, and the English, the British, the British soldiers wanted to come over here, and they didn't want the United States to be independent from the rule of Britain. So they came up with the Second Amendment, and you had these militia groups and everything, and it was meant to be able to protect them, from governmental tyranny. So I don't want to get off of on a tangent, but so you have things like that. So the whole concept is to turn over your rights to this governmental entity, and they're supposed to protect you. They're supposed to provide for you. Egypt, was and the Canaanites, but the Egyptians followed the same pattern as Nimrod. If you look on the genealogy of the sons of Noah, that Egypt, also known as Misraim, was a relative of Nimrod. Nimrod was the son of Cush, and so they were all in the descendants of Ham, and they all followed after the same philosophy, the same doctrine, the same belief system. And so when Israel came out of Egypt, they were coming out of the same type of system. It was a communistic, socialistic system. The Pharaoh would have been a type of an antichrist. And so some of the complaints that the Israelites had against Moses and Aaron was, why did you bring us out of Egypt to starve? Because at least we had free food when we were in Egypt. They talk about the onions and the lentils, but that's based on they were getting free food, and they were protected because Pharaoh, basically they were enslaved, but Pharaoh was their protector. He was the one that provided for them, and that's the ideology behind this particular strategy. So when you look at President Trump in the current time, and everybody who I hear give these speeches against President Trump, I mean, black people especially, and you hear a lot of different things, but I'm going to talk about some specific things because people want to challenge me on policies all the time. And I've heard public speakers, and one of the things about a lot of these pastors or preachers or black people that are public speakers is they're very articulate and they're very charismatic. And so when they give these speeches, especially a pastor, a lot of times they have the rhythm and they have the thing where they know how to move the crowd and to stir the crowd in a certain direction. And if you don't pay attention to the words, you can be very easily deceived. I heard an interview recently, or I saw it, a debate between Roland Martin and some Blexit people. It's Blexit, for those of you who may not know, is black exit from the Democratic Party. Right. So I heard them arguing and debating, I should say debating, not arguing, with Roland Martin. And they said, why don't you come off the Democratic plantation? Why don't black people come off of it? Because it's detrimental. It's not it's not in our best interest that we stay on there. The policies are no good for us and they're detrimental to us. And Roland Martin's response was, well, do you have a better alternative? And let me say to you, that's a horrible answer. That's a horrible reason to stay in a certain place, because somebody else has to provide you with a better alternative. And why do I say that? The reason I said that is because I equate being in a situation like blacks being in the Democratic Party and liberalism that have policies that directly have not only affected us, destroyed the family, causes us to be dependent on the government. It promotes mediocrity and punishes excellence, personal excellence. All those things are true in the Democratic Liberal Party. And so what happens is that I equate it to a woman who's in an abusive relationship. If a woman is married to a man who is abusive, physically abusive, and also cheats on her, if you go to her and point out the fact that she's in an abusive relationship, you could go to her and say, listen, you're in an abusive relationship. This relationship is detrimental. It's no good for you. It's not beneficial for you to stay in this relationship. Her response shouldn't be, well, do you have somewhere else for me to go? Or do you have a place? Do you have a better relationship for me? Do you have a better husband for me? Because my response first and foremost would be, yeah, a better place is out of this relationship. Right. So I shouldn't have to give you a better relationship before you come out of a relationship that's detrimental and damaging to you as a person and as a community. So once we recognize that the Democrats are not helping us, they're no good for us, and over the last 50 years they've been simply taking advantage of us and using us for votes, then the response should be, okay, well, now I acknowledge that. Let me come off of this Democratic plantation. Let me detach myself from the Democrats and from the liberal socialist agenda. And now let's look at what our options are. It can't be the other way around. We can't say, well, we're going to stay here. You don't tell that woman to stay in an abusive relationship until something better comes along. You tell her first, get out of that relationship. Anywhere is better than being somewhere where you're in danger. But that's what they do. But every argument I've heard, every criticism about his policies are all based on entitlements and handouts. So even in the conversation with Roland Martin, when his response was, well, do you have a better option? Do you have a better plan? And, of course, they start giving different options. But my whole thing is, before we even go to the better options, we first have to acknowledge that we're in a unhealthy relationship, entitlement relationship with the Democratic Party that's not set up to help us, but to keep us obligated and dependent upon them. We recognize that first. We come out of that. We take our loyalty away from someone who's not in our best interest, and now we can sit down and strategize as to where we go. Now, with the 2019 movement, we came up with what's called a manifesto, which is an action plan. It's a point of agreement. Right. So we're not going to be loyal or faithful to Democratic parties or individuals. We're loyal to policies and principles that are meant to strengthen and to build our community. Godly principles, biblical principles, all is set up to strengthen our community, to make us independent and help us to move to the place that we're supposed to move to. So when you get a chance, you can go to the 2019 movement.org. I also have a video on my YouTube channel where I actually read the manifesto, so you can hear the various points of the manifesto. But all of these programs that they say, well, what did President Trump do? He didn't do anything for the black community, and his policies are harmful. And the majority of these policies are, like, for instance, he's cutting social programs. He's making it more difficult for you to be on welfare or housing, Section 8. Or, the housing administration. But when you understand that all these were set up based on what's known as social Darwinism, which is based on race theory and all that other stuff, because Darwin was one of the people that propagated this whole idea of the races, and that some races are more evolved than others. So when you understand that it's all based on social Darwinism, which is racist at its core, then it should give you some insight as to why we shouldn't continue long term to be a part of those programs. And this is not a knock. Now, the government has a somewhat of an obligation. I won't say obligation, but I would say, because we have a kind of a Judeo-Christian mindset behind the foundation of our government, we look out for the widows and the orphans. But when we do it, it should only be in a temporary measure. because the actual job of those looking out for the widows and the orphans was God's people, right? So the tithe in the Old Testament was that they would have food in the storehouse so that the widows, orphans, and the foreigners in the land would have some assistance to sustain them. So that was the whole basis for it. So the government was never meant to or set up to look out for the widows and the orphans. The government was never meant to raise your children, raise your family. The government was never obligated to make sure you have a place to live or have food on your table. That's not the government's obligation. I don't want a government like that. I want a government that operates like a referee. So, we have the legislative branch of the Congress that passes laws, right? We vote on our congressmen. Our congressmen go to D.C. and they pass laws. And so we have the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, their job is to rule on the constitutionality of things. So we have a constitution and we have laws. And so when court cases come up before the Supreme Court, they rule whether or not the laws are constitutional and or whether or not they line up with the core values of our Constitution and our legal system. So when you understand and listen to the people's responses of why President Trump is doing things that's detrimental to us. You have what's known as the opioid epidemic. And so, they're saying that they're passing more laws based on the war against drugs. Right now, there's a lot to that. I made a video about it. So, just be careful with that. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that the strategy, the talking points to all these people who are these so-called black leaders that are supposed to be looking out for the best interests of our community, they are all saying that his policies are detrimental to black people because he's cutting entitlement handout programs and things that are based on crippling our community. I do believe that a person who has worked for many years, who has paid their taxes and paid into the system, I believe that they should have a right to their Social Security. Now, as the Social Security system kind of changes and evolves, we may get to a place where people can opt out of the Social Security system and be able to have their own investments. They can put up in their own 401k or, so I would like to see us, change the Social Security system where people can opt out of it, but then have private equity firms that have that have financial instruments that people can pay into, and that will be their retirement. Do it like Social Security, so you have these long-term annuities or something. And I'm just throwing out some things out there, but you can have long-term annuities where you put your money in and you can't take it out until you turn 65, no matter what you do. So that's how the Social Security system is. But unfortunately, the government is in charge of it now. So again, it makes governmental dependency. And so you're not going to get the most bang for your bucks. I would like to, especially if you have long-term, I used to work in the financial markets. If you have long-term investments and stuff like that, that people can be a little bit more aggressive and give you a higher rate of return if you have a longer period of time that the money's going to be in, and they're more stable. So, but anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But I want you to begin to listen to these things. I want you to understand that what we see here in the news and what people are pushing and promoting, and I believe maybe many of these news, quote unquote, and I'm using air quotes when I say newscasters, maybe many of them don't know. They don't understand that, many of the leaders, maybe they don't understand all the nuances of what's going on. But that's why it's important for us to look beyond the surface, look deeper, and look at the foundation of some of these ideologies. Socialism was always created to move to a one world governmental system by causing people to be dependent on the government. Communism is the same thing. Communism's ultimate goal is a universal governmental system that has a concentration of power in a few elite elect people, right? Which we call the globalists, the Illuminati, or whatever the case may be. They actually helped to create communism under Karl Marx, his philosophy that was supposed to get people to trust the government, to be dependent on the government, and not work for their individual, using their individual talents and gifts as a way to generate wealth for themselves and for their family. And so it's all about governmental dependency. It's all about having the government take care. And again, this is not a knock on individuals who are part of the system. What I am attacking is the ideology and the intentions behind that. And so we have to begin to look at that. But like I said, it's just very interesting. I want you to hear, and also you got to realize how racist that whole statement is. With Roland Martin, one of the statements that he made, and I've heard President Obama and some of the other Democrats make the same statement. So anytime that you equate things like welfare or governmental handouts and programs with a group of people, a race of people, that's racist in itself. And so that's why the irony and the hypocrisy is so overwhelming, because they're actually the ones that's demonstrating racism. Because the whole impression that black people can't feed their families or take care of their families unless the government gives them handout programs, that's racist. You think about how we are fueling mediocrity, because what we're saying to people, there's no accountability. So what we're saying to people is you need to wait until you are married to have babies, or if you don't, then these are the things that happen. And let me tell you, statistically speaking, if you hear any economists, they will tell you the way that you can get to the middle class, the best way to either get into the middle class or maintain in the middle class is to finish high school, wait until you are married to have babies, and save your money. Those are the three primary components that if you do that in America, there's a greater chance that you will be in the middle class. Now, one of the things you got to realize too about the Democrats, but even more specifically President Obama, is President Obama is what's known as a Fabian socialist. Now, this is not, I'm not branding him. I'm not trying to insult him or put anything on him. That is him. That is his philosophy. That's what he says he is. Bernie Sanders is a socialist. He said it, that he's a socialist. And because most people don't understand socialism, most people don't understand what it means, what it represents, or the dangers to it, they actually think it's a good thing. And so Bernie was very popular, and he was very popular primarily because most of these young people don't even know what socialism is. They don't know that we had many decades where we were involved in what's known as the Cold War, in which we were fighting against Russia, the USSR, which is a socialist, was the socialist Russia. We were fighting against that for many, many years. Most of them don't know that. They don't understand the dangers of socialism. And so because of that, they're actually they're in favor of it. A lot more and more people are in favor of socialism, and socialism is dangerous. It's not good. It's Luciferian, and it destroys every country and community that it comes in contact with. So anyway, President Obama was a socialist, and he's attaching, like many of them, they attach welfare, they attach all these entitlement programs to race. So they'll say that if you're trying to destroy, if you're trying to, cut welfare programs, then you're being racist because black people won't be able to survive without welfare. I mean, that's what happens. That's the underlying theme, if you think about it. And people will say, no, that's not what they're saying. But that is what they're saying. That is what they're saying. I mean, you think about the war on poverty started in the 1960s. That's been 50 years. Since then, there's a higher percentage of people that are on poverty than were in the 1960s. The family is weaker now than it was in the 1960s, because what welfare does, which is based on, as I said, social Darwinism, is it rewards having babies out of wedlock, and it actually punishes people for getting married, which is a part of their population control. It redefines the family. It tells people to actually delay or put off getting married. So if you tell people to delay or put off getting married, then in essence you are eroding the very the importance of the family structure. I want to tell my kids to find somebody, a godly person, and get married early and have children with your family, with your spouse. That's what I want to encourage my kids. I don't want my son to wait until he's 35 or 40 years old to get married. Because what is the impression? In that time, he's going to be dating, he's going to be sleeping with people, he's going to be doing all that. That's the impression. That's the underlying theme that we're looking at when we look at that, because we know that most people aren't staying virgins till they're married nowadays. Unfortunately, they should, but they're not. But if you're suggesting that telling people to wait until they're married to have children and they can't do that, then again, that's racism, because you're saying that they have no self-control, that's very animalistic. Like, I gotta have sex, and I gotta have unprotected sex, or I gotta have sex in a way that we have, I can't help myself. So telling me to curb my behaviors is not an option. You just have to reward me for my poor choices. And that's what it boils down to when you think about the philosophy behind it, and that's the intention behind it. That is the actual psychological. You have an incoming call. Actual psychological underlying theme of those things. So I just want you to think about that. Like I said, that this is well documented. You can look through it if you get a chance to look up the Tavistock Institute and of social control. These things are well thought out and well planned and well orchestrated, and the plan is working. So I just want you to have your ears open, your eyes open. Again, I want to reiterate my first statement, that liberalism, socialism, they are all Luciferian. They're all demonic doctrines that was perfected in Genesis 11 at the Tower of Babel. And I'll go into detail at another time. But if you scroll through my YouTube channel, you will see where I have talked about it in great detail. And again, this is even the historians, the Hebraic scholars, if you will, they will agree with what I said. That well, let me give you this before I bring this to a close. If you understand Genesis 11, let me break it down real quick for you. Genesis 11. It says all the world was gathered together in Babel, and I'm paraphrasing, and Nimrod was the king. So this was in direct opposition to God, which is why I'm telling you it's Luciferian, is satanic at its core, because God told humanity to spread out over the face of the earth. And God says that each individual was created in the image and the likeness of God. Each person has value, inherent value, because they were created by God. They have a purpose. There's a plan. So what Nimrod did, and he gathered all the people together, which was a direct contradiction to God's law. And they said, let us build us a tower. And that tower was it's what you call a ziggurat, or it's a portal. They were trying to build this because they worship, it's Luciferian. So the fallen angels, and that's a whole nother story, taught them these things. And so they were trying to tap into the dark occultic power. So they said, let us build us a tower that reaches into heaven, lest we be scattered across the face of the earth. So God wanted them scattered across the face of the earth. They gathered together in cities under this Antichrist ruler. And then it says, and let us make a name for ourselves. So God told them to worship God. You should worship him and him alone. Making a name for yourself is a form of self-worship, or mankind, worshiping mankind. And he also says that, and when Nimrod built the city, he used bricks for stones and mortar for slime. Now, if you interpret it by its original language, when it says bricks for stone, bricks are made by man, stones are made by God. Bricks are interchangeable. Every brick is exactly the same. So if you build a structure with bricks, you can take one brick out and exchange it for another, right? There is no individualism in bricks. Stones are very unique. If you build a structure with stones, each stone is unique. So you just can't take one stone out and replace it with another one, because each one is unique, right? And the Bible says you're living stones that are used to create the kingdom of God. So Nimrod was building his kingdom using the people as just a commodity, an interchangeable commodity. When it talks about he used mortar, the mortar represents materialism. And so the promise that he gave to the people was that if you surrender your individualism and your independency to this governmental system, this form of governmental system, I'll protect you and I'll provide for you. That's why in the book of Thessalonians, when it talks about in the last days, right before the great and dreadful day of the Lord, it says, it talks about this, the Antichrist will raise up. And when the people yell peace and safety, this is 1 Thessalonians 4, when people yell peace and safety, sudden destruction has come upon them. Because what it's talking about is alluding to this Genesis 11 scenario in which the people They look for peace and safety from this Antichrist, one world governmental ruler, and that's when destruction hits them, because this Antichrist, one world governmental ruler, doesn't care for humanity, and he looks to destroy humanity. And once he gets them to completely surrender to him, then he's able to destroy humanity, but it brings the judgment of God on. And then Jesus comes back and he overthrows the kingdoms of this world, right? It says that the kings of this world make war with the Lamb, but he'll overcome them because he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And so we have to look at things not only from the natural perspective, but and from a historical perspective, but we also have to look at these things from the lens of the spirit realm. And so we know that God created you in his image and his likeness. You're individual. You have a fingerprint, you have DNA, you have a mind that is unique. Nobody else is exactly like you. And because of that, the enemy wants to do, he would love nothing more than to get you to surrender your will for his will, instead of allowing you to surrender your will for the will of the Father. This has been Dr. Joe Green. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. I love you. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please like and share and hit the notification button, so every time that I make a new video, you'll be the first to know. I love you. Shalom, shalom.